want to turn you over to our good friend I almost said G. Lee. Agent. I know you started off on a tangent today. And we have Maddie and Gabriella and Kerrigan and Greg and Jordan and Gibbler, and they all love bugs, which is what they're telling us, Lee. So I'm going to turn it over to Lee, and Jen is going to monitor the chat, and we're going to learn about the amazing insect senses and all cool things gross and buggy.
Gross and buggy. Oh, man, I don't think I can think of a better way to start the discussion by that phrase. That was pretty good. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my apartment. My name is Lee. I know a lot of you have seen me before for these programs, and hey, thanks for coming back. That's awesome. And I brought my sign from the museum. That's usually hanging in my studio when I'm talking about insects. But today I'm at home, so 2 cats might make appearances during this program because whenever I get out interesting supplies, that's when they show up. And if they do show up, I will introduce them to you. And if not, you'll just have to meet them another time. We're talking about insects today, and my friend Jen is hanging out on the chat, and she's going to help us out because I have discovered that, oh, good, you were here for the Balto class. Oh, I remember your name, Erin. That's awesome. I am really, really bad at remembering to look over at the chat and check on questions because I just get going. So please don't be offended if I don't personally answer your question out loud because Jen will be over there helping out. But if there is something she wants me to chime in on, she will get my attention by saying, hey, on the microphone, so I know that she has a question for me. So what I'm going to do is first share my screen here so I can show you all some pictures. Uh-oh. I don't have the share screen superpower yet. I don't know how Katie or Emily has.
Let me get that for you. Leah. I gave it to you last time when you had a different name, but now you're named correctly.
He's faking you out with these alternate names. Because I have 2 different goofy things to show. Ooh, thank you. I have 2 different things to be able to show you today. I have my super secret secondary camera, and I also have a PowerPoint. So we're going to put that PowerPoint up right now. And what you should be seeing up on your screen is the science of insect senses. And that's what we are discussing today. Now, when I first wrote this program, it had a box of stuff that we would ship to schools all around the different states in the U.S. But alas, it's hard for me to ship it to every kid that's watching when we're all teaching from home. So instead, I'm going to show you some of the goofy things that we use to demonstrate insect senses. And then you can try replicating some of our experiments at your house. Now, one thing I want to share with you is that there's a cartoon. I don't know if all of you watch this cartoon, but it's pretty popular in the U.S. It's called the Wild Kratts. And these guys go around using animal superpowers to solve crimes. Oh, Maddie's seen the show. Awesome. And one time, oh, good, I see you've got some fans. Yes. Well, check this out. The guy that studies insects at our museum, his name is Gavin. And his kids were such super fans of that show that when he discovered a brand new species of praying mantis, and you can see its name up there, it's called Litigursa cratorum. Do you recognize that name? Cratorum. He named it after the Wild Kratts, and those guys were so impressed that they came to the museum, and I'm showing a picture of the Kratts brothers right now, holding up specimens of that brand new praying mantis species, and that's Gavin in the middle, and they came and then they made a whole episode all about his research, which I think is pretty sweet. So that's one cool thing that happens at a museum sometimes is when scientists discover new things, then it gets spread in cartoons that everybody watches. So you don't have to be doing science at a museum to be a scientist. You just have to think like a scientist. I know it's a fun show, isn't it? So that's what we're going to do today is use our brains to think like scientists. That's a picture of a human brain. It's just a drawing, but I think you probably all recognize the idea of a human brain. And insects have brains too, but they're really tiny, and they definitely don't look like a human brain. So I'm going to put an image up there now of what what an insect brain kind of looks like. I don't know about you all, but to me, that kind of looks like a blue octopus. If you look up really high on the octopus, there's these weird bunches of little ovals over there. That's a compound eye. And that's where we're starting our discussion about interesting insect things. Now, I know that all of you are in Canada, and sometimes I teach to kids as far north in Canada as you can go called Nunavut. And there's even, I don't know if there's anybody from Nunavut connected right now, but there's...
Yeah, River's from Nunavut.
Oh, cool, River.
River's from Nunavut, and who else is from Nunavut? Let me see. River and Kieran and, oh, no, yeah, Kieran and Greg is from Yukon.
Oh, nice. I did see somebody from the Yukon pop up. I got to figure out how to make the chat bigger so I can see all these awesome comments that are going on, because for some reason, I'm just seeing them down in a little tiny, well, I'm going to let Jen handle it for now.
If you go to full screen, Lee, go to full screen. Oh, maybe not because you're presenting.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's cool. I trust, because I see everybody's they're popping up at the very top, and I'll just keep cruising in. If there's something that Jen needs to holler at me for, she will holler. But I wanted to show you that I was doing a little research, and man, I don't always do a ton of research before programs, but I found a website that was talking about insects in Nunavut. So if you've never looked up that kind of information before, I found some, and hopefully that's up there right now. It's this website is all about specifically an article that was written about Nunavut's home to bugs galore. And they talk about a kind of weevil. There's a picture of a weevil up there, and we have weevils here in Ohio. Sometimes weevils can get into your food and cause problems munching on the food you want to eat. A couple of different kinds of butterflies. And oh, there's a whole bunch more butterflies. So if you hop on the internet and do a little bit of research of your own, you will definitely discover that even if you don't see them all the time, you will most definitely discover that there are insects all around you. And what's cool about insects is that they have the same senses we do. They have five, they can smell and see and touch and taste and hear, but they do it in really different ways than we do. And I know there's a lot of people out there who do not like insects at all. They're like, nope, that's my least favorite insect on the planet, hate them. That's okay. You don't have to like something in order to learn about it. But sometimes when you learn about it, it helps you to not mind them as much. So just for fun, if y'all want to throw in the chat over there, some insect that you really don't like, or if you really, really like all insects, like me, I think they're all pretty exciting. I think it'd be fun to have 6 legs or more. Then you could put your most favorite insect in the chat instead. And that'll be fun for me to take a look at after our adventure today. All right, so let's start. Uh-oh, Aiden is wondering if you can share a fun fact. You can put it over there in the chat there, and then they can relay it to me. That way I can keep on trucking with the program, and you can share your fun fact. That is totally cool. So what we're going to do first is we're going to investigate how can you really study insects when they're so small. Well, I could try and hold them up really close to the camera, but that would be kind of ridiculous. So what we did is at the museum, we used this great big cool microscope that is called a scanning electron microscope. And what it does is it takes pictures with electricity. So some of the pictures I'm going to show you in this program are going to be these great big huge magnified, sorry guys, of course right as I start teaching there's an eyelash that's like stabbing me in my eyeball right now. I'll show you when that happens. But we're going to talk about eyelashes here in a couple of minutes. So to mess with it. And when you see these pictures that pop up as black and white or kind of gray, those are taken by this scanning electron microscope. Now, the way that we start this program is thinking about food, because that's a very important thing. Everybody needs to eat. And here is a hungry cat sitting there mulling over, get my food, how am I going to get my food? So our question is, how do insects find their food? Well, a lot of insects have awesome, I know that was not my cat, that was a pretty funny cat picture. Insects that have good eyesight, like praying mantises, like dragonflies, like spiders, are often insects that have to hunt other insects to find their food. Because, as you might know, if you've ever tried to swat a fly or a mosquito, they can be a pretty difficult target to grab. So you've got to have really good eyesight in order to grab that insect. So what we're going to try is a little experiment to replicate what's called a compound eye. Ooh, I saw the word wasps pop up there. Wasps and praying mantises and dragonflies and those weevils, they have what's called a compound eye, which really means a whole bunch of teeny tiny, and mosquitoes, teeny tiny eyes all together working like pixels of a high definition television screen. Some of you might know that if the more pixels that you have, the better the picture. So here's a picture of a praying mantis in our fancy microscope, magnified 30 times. We're going to go a little higher, my friends. Woo! We're going to go to 60 times. Now that's a really big praying mantis head. And I can see its great big antenna coming out of its head. I can see its weird munching mouth parts. But I want to zoom in on that great big compound eye and make that just a little bit bigger. That is magnified 100 times. And And if you look very carefully, you might be able to spot that there are all these little tiny gray circles. Or actually, they're not even circles. They're six-sided, so they're kind of like the little spots of a honeycomb. Those are the little tiny eyes all stuck together. And their fancy name is Amatidia. This is a picture of a fly, hexagon. Is that the right word? I'm going to go with hexagon. That sounds right. And that's a live fly on the left, but then there's a fossilized eye on the right. Ooh, yeah, it does kind of look like a piece of styrofoam, because there's all those little holes in there. And those little holes are each little tunnels that go to a nerve that sends the picture to the insect's brain. So this fancy schmancy picture right here is blowing up how all those little teensy weensy eyes all work together to funnel a piece of the picture. And amatidium is the weird word that you can see off to the right-hand side. I wanted to figure out a way to really illustrate how those work. So here's a picture of how we used to think insects saw stuff. Hollywood version over on the left, where instead of just one red car, you see a whole bunch of red cars. And that's what scientists used to think. But that's not any good. I mean, if you're trying to catch something and you see like a million of it instead of just the one thing, how's that going to work? That's no good, right? So now we've realized we were wrong about that. And we think that insects just kind of have slightly blurry vision, but the more of those teeny tiny little eyes they have, those teeny tiny amatidia, then the better their vision is. And that means that insects that have thousands of them have incredibly good vision. Like this honeybee. Lots of different kinds of bees out there on this planet, and they all have the same kind of eye called a compound eye. So if we stick that bee into our fancy schmancy microscope, there he is lying on his back on this little black pad that goes in the microscope, then we can take a look at not only the bee's spectacular mohawk hairstyle, how about that? They are so crazy hairy, aren't they? But also the big old compound eye. We're going to magnify in on that compound eye to see if we can spot some of those. Oops, sorry, just kidding. We're going to magnify them later because I wanted to show you the flowers first. Well, that's a good question. Is it dead? Yes, the insects that we put inside of our scanning electron microscope were collected by the entomology guys. That's people who study insects. And they were killed by putting them in a little jar with some gas that they just pass out, and then they're not alive anymore. And that way we can dry them out and they last for a really long time in our museum. If you put a live insect in there, it would be wiggling and it would be really hard to focus the microscope on it. Take a look at that flower on the left. Looks yellow to me. The one on the right looks kind of pink and then really dark pink in the middle. And that's because bees can see a totally different kind of color than humans can. It's called ultraviolet radiation. And that flower has a whole bunch of that ultraviolet reflecting pigment, that's the color molecule, right in the middle. So the bee knows right where to stick its tongue to lap up that delicious nectar and get that pollen all over it. But here's how the bee would really see that flower. Now, do we know that for 100% sure? No, of course not. We can't talk to a bee and ask them, hey, man, what are you seeing today? I guess I should say, hey, lady, since all the bees out there are girls that are looking for food. But we can make a pretty good guess. This is our pretty good guess. What that flower would look like to the bee really is it would be a picture made of lots of tiny little circles, because each of those amatidia are sending a part of the picture. And you can still tell it's a flower, even though it's not a perfectly the way we think of it, image of a flower. So let's try this with our own human eyes and see if we can replicate kind of, sort of, what it's like to have amatidia seeing things. I'm going to take my glasses off for this. All right, here we go. What you want to do, my friends, is now if you want to go hardcore with this, you could go get two clean, don't go now, but later, you could go get two clean toilet paper tubes. Or if that kind of grosses you out because it's been in the bathroom, I get it. You could get like one paper towel tube and cut it in half. But for now, we can just go like that. All right, so when you go like that, now I can see out of my left eye and my right eye, but I want to make sure that my right eye cannot see what my left eye is seeing. So I'm going to adjust my hands like this. So now my big fingers are in the middle, like right on top of my nose. And that makes sure that whatever I'm seeing out of this eye, this other eye can't see that, right? So I see two different images, but they're all part of the same big image, right? So I'm still seeing the room, but I have this little spot in the middle where I really don't see anything. And that means that I would need more, like more eyes up here, more eyes up here. lots of eyes in order to see the whole room. Got it? That's how Ommatidia work. If you only had two of them, you'd have this spot in the middle, man, where you really can't see anything. By having more of them all over the place, then you get a really good image. Ta-da! So there's your first weirdo thing we can do to appreciate insect senses, is try to replicate what's called an Ommatidia. Hopefully that made sense to everybody. I like doing weirdo things in science because, hey man, why not? You're not going to be goofy in science. You're not going to have any fun, right? Okay, so we talked about eyes a little bit. Whoa, I threw a giant spider at you. So sorry. I hope nobody screamed and jumped away from their computer. Is everybody okay? Problem with me doing programs like this is I don't always know what picture in my slideshow is coming up first. So I was like, oh, there's a spider. Woo, sorry. So that's the face of a jumping spider. And look carefully. There's 4 great big eyes staring at us. And then if you squint way over on the right, there's a little, I know spiders are kind of cool, Maddie. I agree with you. There's a little eye back here. There's one over there. They're hidden on the back side of the spider's face. Almost all spiders have 8 little round eyes, but they're not the same as Ommatidia. Their eyes more like ours. They actually have muscles that they can focus those eyes, like we have muscles on our eyes. Like our pupil can get bigger and smaller to adjust for the light coming in. And the muscles on our eyes can pull and stretch our eyes to help focus over there, things far away, and then things up close, right? If you have your finger far away from you like this and you're looking at it, and you slowly bring it toward your face, it's hard to see that finger. You can feel those eye muscles trying to focus. So check this out. I found this cool video of this little dinky yellow spider. I'm going to run it once, and then if I need to go back and run it again, because sometimes there's a delay with the WebEx, well, all these apps. But when that little spider is looking around, behind its big brown eyes, you should be able to see 2 tubes that are kind of triangle shaped. I'm going to go ahead and run that again. And those 2 tubes are actually the tubes of muscles focusing their eye. You can see right through the top of the spider's head. It is a cute little spider. That little spider in real life is pretty dinky. It's only about the size of your pinky fingernail. It's a little tiny spider. But how cool is that? You can see his little eye muscles focusing. I find that adorable. So now we have found at least one thing that makes us like a spider. That we have similar ways that we focus our eyes. And for the other insects out there that have those Ommatidia, we have figured out at least one way to try and mimic that. I'm going to take a smell right now around my apartment. And you know what? My cat's litter box is directly behind me. And he does this to me every time. As soon as I start teaching, he goes in there and he takes a poo. So guess what I'm going to be smelling here in a minute? You don't have to write it in the chat. You can just guess. I can hear him scratching in the litter back there, Turkey. Thanks a lot, Bacon. I appreciate that, man. And then there's a picture on the screen of an alligator, and it's got a little praying mantis sitting on its nose. And when we're thinking about smell, there's a lot of things that we like to smell. We like to smell our favorite food. Yeah, we don't like to smell poo, exactly. And one thing that's super important in the insect world is using their sense of smell to find a mate. Because insects are small and the world is very big. And they don't have texting apps and other ways to find friends to hang out with. So what you're seeing on the screen are 2 pupa. That's like a cocoon where the moth that's inside is changing from a caterpillar to a moth. And the one on the top is a male, a boy. And the one on the bottom is a female. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what those moths look like when they hatch out of their pupa. And they're huge. They're beautiful. Those guys are called Polyphemus Moths. And I'm lucky because here in Ohio, sometimes we find them during the summertime, and they're just amazing. They're so big. And take a look at the difference in the size and shape of those antennae. The male's on the top again, humongous antenna. And the female is on the bottom, much smaller. And that's because the male moths do a lot more flying around, waving their antenna, trying to find the females. And the females are putting out a very special smell called pheromones. It's a communication molecule between those moths. So let's think about this for a second. If you're a moth and you're flying around, why would having antenna on your head like this, why would that be more useful or give you a better sense of smell instead of having just these 2 holes, right, like that, when I'm sniffing around and inhaling air? Why would the antenna be better at collecting smells all the time? If anybody wants to toss a thought over in the chat about that, and you can think about it. You don't have to like give me an answer right this nanosecond. Gibbler said they move. They do. They flap around. Ooh, I think I just figured out how to make the chat bigger. Maybe. Oh, I did it. I forgot to make the participants list go away. Now I can see all the chats. That's exactly right. Those antennae move. And as they're flapping around in the air, there's little teeny weeny hairs on the antenna, and each one is connected to a little nerve that is a sense of smell nerve. Whoa, that's a lot better than having to inhale all the hair right here, right? And then you have to exhale again and then inhale. So we can never smell all the time. You really only smell half the time because the other half of the time you're exhaling, right? Oh, mind blown on that one, right, my friends? Let's take a look at the antenna on these moths' heads and see if we can spot these little teensy-weensy, so small hairs that make their sense of smell possible. I'm getting my picture back up there of my moths, and now we're going to magnify one antenna. So just that one great big antenna on that boy moth's head. There it is. It looks humongous already, and that's only magnified 50 times. But what we're going to do is we're going to magnify one big stem that you can see coming off of that antenna. And if you squint right now with this picture, you might be able to see that there's lots of other little bitty hairs, right, sticking off. Let's make it bigger. I'll make it bigger. Here we go. What? Now what you're seeing, that's the one big stem, the little tiny hairs you could see sticking out before, but there's millions of other super tiny hairs in between those. Man, those are some hairy antennae. So remember, each one of those hairs has the little nerve attached to it that sends the smell message to the moth's brain. Dude, moths can smell so much better than people can. You've probably heard about sharks in the ocean, how they can smell a little bit of blood smell in the water. Sure they can. But guess what? Moths have a way better sense of smell than a shark because they can find a female moth miles and miles away just by flapping around and waving their antenna. But it's not just moths. This is a beetle. And here's another power question for all of my entomologist friends out there. Entomology, you all know that phrase, right? Oh, could you feel the hair? That's an interesting question. On the moth's antenna, probably not because they're so small that our great big human fingers wouldn't be able to perceive how tiny they are. Those hairs are they're microscopic themselves. I know, it's kind of amazing. I mean, humans have a lot of hair on our bodies, but nothing like an insect. Now about this beetle. That beetle has little beetle babies that are called larvae, and the larva looks kind of like a really chunky caterpillar. And they want to lay their eggs on a dead mouse. I know that sounds gross, but somebody's got to eat the dead mouse, right? Otherwise, the dead mouse is just going to lie there and rot and stink up the place. And if we have millions of dead mice all over the place, it's terrible. Right? So these little beetles show up, and they help to munch on the dead mouse. There's a mushroom out there that totally fakes out the beetles. And the mushroom that you can see, it looks kind of like a blob of cotton. That is called a stink horn fungus. They are helpful because the beetles help to bury and get rid of all that dead animal that's just lying around. And here, this pesky mushroom is faking these poor little beetles out, man, because that mushroom smells like a dead mouse. So these poor little beetles show up, and they're like, oh boy, I'm going to find a mouse. And then they're like, where's the mouse, man? And they walk around for a while, and they probably get really annoyed. And they can't find the mouse, so they give up. And what happens is, as they're hanging out on that mushroom, the mushroom is secretly dumping these little, it's called spores, onto those beetles. And when the beetles leave, they give up and they're annoyed, and they say, all right, fine, I can't find a mouse, I'm out here. When they do find a dead mouse, one of those little spores from the fungus falls off, and a new mushroom can grow there. And I'll bet you all know how bees and moths and butterflies and lots of other flying insects, they do that for flowers, right? It's called pollination. Yep, so there's a way a fungus that smells like a dead mouse manages to get itself reproducing with the help of those poor little beetles who still don't get a delicious mouse meal, but, you know, at least they helped the mushroom to grow some more mushrooms. Man, smelling things, important, especially if you're looking for food, right? You got to be able to smell your food. You know what it's like when you have a cold in your nose and you really can't smell anything. Nothing really tastes right either, man. And then seeing, you got to be able to see your food. If you don't look at it, it's just not as exciting, right? I want to be able to see that hot dog or whatever I'm about to eat before I munch on it. What about touching. Does touching help you know where your food is? Does touching help you recognize your food? I have an example right here of this completely ridiculous fake tomato. And sometimes I hand kids this tomato and I say, hey, do you like to eat raw tomatoes? And they'll be like, oh yeah, that's cool. And I'll say, good, here, take this tomato. And they take it. And then I ask them, are you actually going to bite that? And of course, here, you guys listen. Wait, let's see. I'm talking, and this is my microphone right here. So I'm going to tap the tomato right next to the microphone. Ready? Did you hear that? I'll do it again. That doesn't sound like a real tomato, does it? Nope. And that's because it's plastic. So the sense of sight might tell you, hey, that looks like a great tomato. I think I'll eat that. But once you touch it, no. Your fingers tell you, this feels plastic. I'm not going to bite that. And if I tried to smell it, it doesn't smell like a real tomato either. So with a human, that's something that's different than an insect. Because insects will sometimes try over and over and over again to get the same food, even if it's not really there. Like those beetles. They will crawl around on that mushroom for a really long time before they finally give up and are like, all right, fine, we're out of here. Yeah, but humans are like, hold on. So we're able to take all of that sense information and smush it together in our brains a little more. And that way the word is synthesize. It means when you're putting a bunch of things together into a big concept. We can synthesize all of our senses a little better than insects do. Okay, I've been doing a whole lot of talking now. I want to show you a very weird way that we study insects before we tackle our next senses. I want to show you a couple of praying mantises that were actually used in the research that we do at the museum. But in order to do that, I must turn on the secondary camera. Drum roll. Oh, is it working? Ooh, there we go. And what you are seeing is my dining room table. And there are two praying mantises sitting there. And they are not alive anymore. These two were alive, let's see. When we got these guys, it was about 2.5 years ago. They were being used in a research project at the museum to study insect brains. And when they died, because insects don't live forever, we simply dried their bodies out and then stuck them inside of this plastic. So there is one praying mantis. It's a female, and she was used in the research to learn about how their brains work. I'm going to turn it sideways, and that way you can see her little flat body inside the plastic there. Now, the one next to her also was used in the same research. But you might notice that there's something interesting going on with this praying mantis. There is, I saw something about all black. Is my picture not coming through? What do you think there, fabulous hosts?
No, wait, you're fine. Keep doing.
Okay, cool.
Keep going.
Cool. So this praying mantis is actually wearing a crazy little backpack. And I'm going to zoom in as close as this iPad will let me go so you can see that iPad, that little pack. The green and the reddish or yellowish parts right here, depending on what color your screen's making them, those are little wires connected to the blue part right here. And that blue part is all the electronics. And then there's some little wires that go from the electronics all the way up there, and they connect to the praying mantis's head. And those wires actually go inside the praying mantis's brain. Now, all of that sounds pretty terrifying to me. Like, what? You're sticking some kind of wire in my brain. Oops, I hit the mute button, sorry. But they do that with human beings, too. There was a surgery going on over at the Cleveland Clinic just a couple of years ago, and they televised it so everybody could see how cool this was. And they had the man who's having the brain surgery lying on a table with sort of a brace on his head so he wouldn't move his head around too much. And the doctors shaved all the hair off his head, and then they cut the skin open, and they took the skin off. And then they took the part of his skull off, so his brain was totally exposed. And then they were taking these little wires, and they were going boink, and putting this little tiny wire against his brain. And there was a little tiny bit of electricity coming out of that wire. So not enough to hurt his brain, just enough to kind of bug it. Kind of like if you ever get a static shock, you know, when you're walking around your house, you're like, and you touch a light switch or something, you're like, oh, just a little tiny. And then the researchers would ask the man who was awake during this surgery, what do you feel? or what are you experiencing right now? So when that little needle would go in one certain spot of his brain, the man would say, oh, do you all smell that? I suddenly smell a flower. There was no flower there, but that little tiny wire was making the cells in that man's brain that know what a flower smells like. It was making them send messages to the rest of his brain saying, oh, we're excited, we smell a flower. Whoa! So they could map out this guy's brain and figure out where all the different parts were. It was truly amazing. So you can do this kind of research with a human, and you can do it with an insect. But an insect is pretty darn small. Think about how tricky that would be to put a wire into an insect's brain. Oh, it's so small. And there's actually a video on our website about this program that I can send the link. I don't know if this will work. I'm not sure if I can go get to it right now. I'll wait till the end. I'll wait till the end to see if I can get there. But you can watch the video with me talking to the scientists and actually see them putting this little tiny wire inside the praying mantis's brain. It's so crazy. I don't even want to tell you how they slow the mantis down. I want you to see it on the video. So remind me of that at the ending of this program so I can bring up the web page and you guys can see where it is. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we talked about seeing things and compared our eyes. You saw my praying mantises and how we put the wire in their little tiny brains to analyze the electrical activity of their brain. We talked about smelling, right? But now we got to analyze this touch thing some more because I don't know about you, but my sense of touch is pretty important to me when I'm feeling like bananas. I don't like really squishy bananas. I like them when they're not really, they're still kind of green. I know that's weird. A lot of people don't like not ripe bananas, but that's me. And all I have to do is touch that banana to realize, wait a minute, no, this banana is not going to work for me. Let's check out how insects handle this stuff. All right, back in here. Oh, there we go. That was our honeybee. Oh, did I jump in the honeybee? Oh yeah, this is the part with the eye. I told you guys I was going to zoom in on the honeybee's eye. This is fantastic. I'm so glad this picture's right here. So there's the honeybee magnified 30 times. Crazy, all those hairs sticking off her head and her great big compound eyes. We're going to zoom in closer. And now you start to see the little tiny ommatidia. Let's zoom in even closer. And now I can see lots of all those ommatidia. But if you look really close, and I'm going to kind of drive my arrow over here, right? I can see something sticking up in between those ommatidia. What about here? Remember, that's only magnified 250 times only, right? That's kind of amazing to magnify something that big. But we can go even farther. Whoa! This is magnified 800 times. And now I'm seeing it's a little hair sticking up in between those ommatidia. And there's another one over here. Now think about it, my friends. At the earlier part of this class, wasn't I fooling around with my eye? I was like, and I mentioned my eyelashes. Doesn't it drive you nuts when something is tickling your eyelash? It does, doesn't it? That's because your eyes are precious. You need your sense of sight. And we only have 2 eyes. Hold on one momento here, my friends. Where is the, wait a minute. Stand by. Sorry, gang. I got a little tickle in my throat and I ran out of juice. And, my goodness, I had nothing left to drink from my beverage earlier. Darn. And of course, right now, I have been talking all day. All of a sudden I'm talking. This is when my throat chooses to be dry and scratchy. I apologize. I might have to mute the microphone and cough some more. There we go. So when you are having something tickle your eyelash, it drives you crazy because we only have 2 eyes. They're precious. However, this honeybee has thousands of those little tiny ommatidia. So they don't have a hair sticking in between every single one of them, but they have quite a few. And I want to show you how they help. What you're going to see on this screen is a video of an adorable little female praying mantis. And she is nibbling on her antenna. You can see her little mouth parts are moving. And there, now the antenna will sort of pop out of her mouth. And all of a sudden, she gets a little itch on her eye. And she uses the front part of her gripping leg, which normally is used to grab and hold other insects while she eats them. But she's using it to clean her face like a little kitty cat. And then she nibbles on her leg in a very particular spot. And that is what she was nibbling on. That's a super close-up, magnified 50 times of that praying mantis's front leg. And there's little tiny hairs on there too. And guess what? Those little hairs, they match up with where the ommatidia are on the praying mantis's eye, which means it's kind of like a little comb going between them and helping to brush out whatever was there bothering her and tickling her. Like an eye brush. Yeah, that's a fun phrase. I kind of like that. But remember, the outside of an insect is very different from a human being. They don't have the same kind of skeleton as we do. And I'm kind of wondering if anybody knows what kind of skeleton does an insect have? Do you know the term for their skeleton? Exoskeleton. Julia was fast on that. Yeah, exo means outside. Earlier today, some of my astronomy guys they were talking about exoplanets, meaning planets outside of our solar system. So if it's exoskeleton, it means skeleton on the outside of you. Does your skeleton have a sense of touch? Well, it's on the inside of your body, right? And I know when I bang, on a bone, it hurts. But does that solid bone material actually have a sense of touch? Well, we can't reach our internal bones, but we could test our teeth. Please test your own teeth. Do not test your friend's teeth or your neighbors or whoever else might be hanging out with you watching this, all right, your brothers and sisters. Test your own teeth, okay? And what I want you to do is just gently tap on your own tooth. Just tap it. All right. When I tap my tooth, I can feel that. But I think my finger feels this. I saw a question from Gabriella, but I'm pretty sure we wrap it up at 5:30. But I'll let Melly double check on that. Yeah, but if I just lay my finger on my tooth, does my tooth feel my finger or does my finger feel my tooth? Hard to figure that one out, huh? You'd almost have to go and get like a toothpick and very gently tap your tooth. And you'll realize that, your tooth, because your tooth is part of your skeleton, this solid stuff right here, your enamel, it doesn't have a sense of touch. There's no nerves here on my tooth, but the whole tooth is attached to a nerve. So if you jiggle your tooth, you can feel that because now you're sending a message to the nerve. That's kind of sort of what it would be like to be an insect, is you're trapped inside this suit of armor. And the only way you can feel stuff is if something touches one of your little hairs that is sticking through your suit of armor. That's a weird concept. And here is a super goofy thing I came up with to try and demonstrate this. I borrowed, I didn't even have these gardening gloves in my house. I got a hold of a gardening glove from one of my neighbors and I got permission to destroy it. And make sure you get permission because in order to do this, you have to take some toothpicks and jam them through the glove, which means now the glove is going to be leaky, right? And that might annoy the person who's trying to use the gloves to do their dishes. And now what I've done, and don't think I'm stabbing myself in my hand, these toothpicks are actually kind of round at the bottom. They're the kind that sometimes are used at fancy cocktail parties and stuff. But you could use regular toothpicks, just break the sharp tip off, right, so you don't hurt your hand. And I stuck them through the glove. So now, when I'm poking these toothpicks, I can feel them poking against my hand. But if I gently touch the outside of the glove, my hand doesn't feel that because the glove is too thick. So right now, the glove is kind of pretending to be my exoskeleton. And the toothpicks are pretending to be those little sensory hairs that inside my insect body are able to feel something because they're connected to the nerves. So if I were to take this pen and just gently touch the outside of the glove, my finger can't feel that. And really the most efficient way to test this is if you have the glove on, have your eyes closed and then have somebody else touch, right? Because if you're looking at it, sometimes you think you feel it, it fakes your brain out. But if I close my eyes, I can't feel that at all inside the glove. But if I knock this pen against the toothpicks, I can totally feel that. So that's a way to sort of get an idea of what it would be like to be an insect living inside of this crazy exoskeleton and not able to feel everything all of the time. It's a weird concept. Sometimes I wish I did have the powers of the wild kratts and I could turn into an insect for a while and just find out what it's actually like. Okay, I'll say we talked about touch. We talked about smell. We talked about seeing things. I forgot to show you all something. When I was talking, rewind your brains just a little bit because I wanted to mention this vegetable. This is a totally plastic pretend piece of asparagus. I don't know if anybody watching has ever eaten asparagus before. I, as a kid, would eat asparagus all the time. You can toss it in the chat if you've ever eaten asparagus before. And it has a flavor that not everybody likes, but it also has, oh, I see a couple of you have, cool, that there's an interesting thing about asparagus that has to do with our genetics, our DNA. And some humans, when they eat asparagus, it makes your pee smell funny. It changes the smell of your pee. If you're having it tonight, Jordan, you could try this. Yes, it makes your pee stink. It smells kind of like a Sharpie marker. But in my family, when me and my brother would eat asparagus, it would make our pee smell funny. But it did not work for my mom, my dad, or my sister. How crazy is that? And so they never believed us. They were like, "Yeah, you guys are just making it up." We're like, "No, seriously." They couldn't even smell it. We'd tell them to come in the bathroom and no. It took me all these years until I finally worked at the museum and talked to some scientists there about DNA, and they said, "Oh yeah, that's totally a thing. If you have the right kind of DNA in your body, when you eat asparagus, you produce a chemical called asparagine, and it makes your pee smell funny. But not everybody has that DNA. So that's kind of weird in my family that me and my brother have it. Got it from our grandparents, but my mom and dad, nope, and neither my sister. So if you do ever eat some asparagus, do that test. I mean, I know it's kind of weird to say smell my pee, but it's the way you can test it out. Yeah, and it is like the gene for cilantro. Ooh, Charlotte, I'm glad you mentioned that because not everybody likes the herb. I don't have any cilantro here. I'll show you some. Not everybody likes the herb called cilantro. Some people think it kind of tastes like soap. They really don't like it at all. I happen to like it because to me, it kind of tastes like lemon. And the seeds of cilantro in some stores aren't called that. They're called coriander instead. So if you have coriander seeds as a spice in your house, you could try munching on a few of those and having the rest of your family munch on them and decide if you like it or not. But it's also in your DNA. Isn't that cool? I love it. And insects, of course, have DNA too. So I don't know if insects who eat asparagus have that problem, but humans do. All right, enough asparagus silliness. Thank you for putting up with me. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about noise. Because, hey, man, we're doing video conferencing, and this whole thing that we're doing right now totally relies on the picture being good and the sound being good. And most praying mantises do not have an excellent sense of hearing. Many of them are totally deaf, and that's because they hunt during the day. They 100% rely on their amazing eyesight to keep them safe and to help them do what they need to do, and they really don't need a sense of hearing. But some praying mantises do have a very specific sense of hearing. They can hear bats. Yeah. What do you know about bats? When bats are flying around, with my generic bat hand, bat hand, and when bats are flying around at night, how do they find their food? What do they do? Somebody knows. You guys know. Somebody knows about bats. How does a bat find their food? I mean, they do. Some bats are pollinators, certainly, and lick nectar out of flowers. Echolocation! Woo! Smart team, yeah. But most bats are hunters of insects. Some bats hunt tiny little mammals. Some bats actually hunt fish. And they go cheep, cheep, cheep. I know, bat hand, no. I'm never going to live that one down now. Yeah, so if you're a bat flying around and you're going cheep, 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 and you're making these little noises, then those little noises bounce off of the insect, zoom, and you can go catch the insect. But if the insect can hear you, then they know you're coming. So there are some praying mantises that have a really good sense of hearing, exactly tuned to hear the bats that are trying to find them. And if that praying mantis is flying along and it hears cheep, 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 that mantis goes brr, and they just crash to the ground. They just fall, poof, and they land. And that way they're safe from the bat that was trying to find them. Sneaky! But that's only a few not many praying mantises. I had to find another insect to feature. And there's an insect that I forgot to look up if they live in Canada or not. So I'm going to bring up a picture of them, and my friends, you can just coach me on whether or not. It's called a cicada, and that's a picture of a dried cicada that is stuck on a piece of styrofoam. And we were going to put it inside of our great big microscope. Cicadas hatch out in hundreds of thousands of them, like once a summer. Blah, we got a lot of cicadas, and then most of their life they spend under the ground. There are some cicadas that spend like 17 years under the ground before they finally hatch out. And they spend most of their time sucking on plant juices, usually whatever tree that they're living underneath. And there is the cicada lying on its back. It's going to get pushed into, super noisy and odd. Okay, so some of you have heard them. Cool, I wasn't sure if they were that far north. Some kinds of cicadas are the loudest insects on the planet. And inside of our big old scanning microscope, this weird wrinkly looking thing, that's the part of the cicada's body that makes noise. It's called a tympanum. And then the funny little angled black hole kind of to its right, that's called the tympanum. So we got the tymbal and the tympanum right next to each other. Well, okay, so that would be like if you had your mouth facing your own ear. And then in the summertime, you had to scream as loud as you possibly could to find your friends. And in this case, it's the male cicadas who are screaming really loud, "Hey, ladies! Hey, ladies! I'm over here. Anybody want to lay some eggs?" That's pretty much what the cicadas are doing all summer. And the ladies are just quietly sitting on their branches going, "Yeah, I'm over here, but you got to look for me." So the males are super loud, and the females are just going, making a teeny tiny sound. And that, water boatman, I've never heard one of those making a noise. I'm going to have to look those up. Thanks for the tip, Greg. I want you all to hear the 3 kinds of cicadas that we have here in Ohio. And then I'm going to show you one insect on this planet that our entomology guys knew about that actually hunts a cicada with using sound. Let me get back into my PowerPoint here, because the first little clip is a video with the cicadas making noise. Here we go. This particular type that's being shown are the ones that stay underground for 17 years. And these are locations here in Ohio, very close to where I am. That's the loud one.
Lee, we aren't actually able to hear it.
Oh, there's no sound with the video? Oh, I wonder why.
Nope. You might need to mute your mic and just rely on the computer mic.
Let's try that.
Still not hearing it. WebEx has some issues with sound when you're sharing a video, Lee. I wonder.
Way to illustrate how loud they are. Because loud cicadas, the ones that are, it's okay. I don't want to hold everybody while I'm fooling around with the video, because I have a way to show how loud they are. They are as loud as things that get up to 100 to 120 decibels. And a decibel is just a measurement of loudness. And on that video, it goes on to show a guy using one of those things that you use to break up a sidewalk, the concrete in the sidewalk, those machines that do that, and a motorcycle. It shows an ambulance with their siren going off. So you can think of all those really loud things to demonstrate how loud a cicada is. But while we were trying to find something that sounds like a cicada, well, I do see a lot of you are talking about when they creep out of the ground and do they bite. They do have little pinchy claws that they can use to hang on to that can pinch pretty hard. It's not the same as biting, though. They're just holding on. This silly thing, this noisemaker, and I did remember to turn my microphone back on, right? This noisemaker right here is metal. And when I turn that plastic tab, there's a little piece of metal in there that kind of flaps around, hitting, you see that. Oh, right by the corner, the real edge right there. So when I spin it, that's already kind of obnoxious and loud. And it's really annoying my cat. I don't know if you can see him over there. Let's show the annoyed cat. Here's an annoyed cat. What do you think of that, Tabasco? He's like, hey, you just woke me up with this thing. Yes, this is not successfully attracting the cat. The cat is not attracted. No, you don't. I don't think he was awake last time I taught this class. So, if you have 4 of these things going at the same time, that's the same loudness, the same volume as one male cicada. What? Yeah, they are crazy loud, man. And because the females just make this little tiny noise, nobody thought, oh, now the cat's coming over to get this. Great. Here he comes. Nobody thought there was any other insect that was using sound to hunt them because they're so loud already. And the way that they don't make themselves deaf by making their own noise so loud, because remember, their sound maker's right next to their ear, they actually shut off their hearing when they're making their call. They stop being able to hear just for those couple of seconds while they make the loud noise. Then they can hear again. It's amazing. Let me show you this cicada, because there is one little guy. Here we go. This Katydid right here, that guy. That is a Katydid from Australia, and it has super spiky front legs. Can you see the spikes on its front legs, man? And it grabs male cicadas and eats them because it mimics the female. And somebody had their camera, and there was a cicada on their screen, on their door, and there's one of those big Katydids right there. Even if you can't hear the noise, that's okay, because it's really quiet. But that male cicada hears this little tick, tick, tick noise that the Katydid is making, and he walks over to it because he thinks it's a lady. He thinks it's a girl cicada. And it's just as he's saying, hi, how you doing? Ah! The Katydid grabs him and eats him. So sneaky, man. That is not cool. In my book, I think that's a pretty dirty trick. Pretty dirty trick on the Katydid's part. Well, all right. Now that we're getting close to 5:30, I need to let you all escape and find your own food, and my cat has come over to help me. It is time to wrap up the program with our last sense that we're discussing. And we're going to talk about taste. Right now, while I go back to my PowerPoint and harass my cat, I want you to put in the chat, what is your least favorite food? Like whatever food you think is the worst that you would never want to eat ever. For this cat right here, right now, his favorite food is my microphone cord. He's trying very hard to get a hold of that. And hold on, Tabasco. This is Tabasco, the cat, by the way, who's attempting to eat my microphone cord. Let's see. Oh, I see some foods popping up, eggs and fish and rice and pasta. And look at all those different kinds of food that everybody hates. Yeah, everybody's got some food that you're like, nah, don't like it. Well, Brussels sprouts, see, exactly. And there might be other people going, wait, that's my favorite food. What are you talking about, right? So humans are cool because we can learn to experience and try lots of different kinds of foods. But most insects, they're stuck with whatever food that they're evolved and adapted to eat. They can't change it up too much. All right, there's a few that can change things up, but not many. So we're going to end up this program with a little bit of butterfly appreciation because there is one butterfly out there, and there's a funny picture of a baby praying mantis having a lick of a lollipop. But there's one poor insect out there that has to eat food. Oops, that's my picture of a fly. That flies taste with their feet. That's a big fly foot. One of these days I'm going to remember that I had that picture in there. But here's the butterfly I'm talking about. Poor little monarch butterflies. They're beautiful. Their baby caterpillars are adorable because they have these wonderful black and yellow stripes. I mean, they're cool looking, right? But man, they have a rough life because poor little baby monarch butterflies, they only eat this one plant called a milkweed plant. And the sap that drips out of the milkweed plant is poisonous. It would kill the baby caterpillar if it ate too much of that sap. But it wants to eat some. It wants to eat just a little bit because that sap is also poisonous. So if they get a little bit of that poison into their bodies, then they taste bad and other animals won't eat them. But they have to make sure they only eat a little bit. This is the cleverest thing I've ever seen any caterpillar come up with. Notice how the holes on this leaf in this picture are round. And there's that itty bitty caterpillar right there. We're going to magnify him, make him really big. And if you look carefully at what he's biting, he's just biting these tubes. Those are called veins on the leaf. And when he munches through a vein on the leaf, that means it stops the sap from flowing through that vein. And he only gets a little tiny bit of that poisonous sap into his body. But it's just enough to make that monarch butterfly, when it turns into a butterfly, it tastes bad too. Poor little guy. That means that whole caterpillar's existence, they have to eat terrible tasting food. Poor little guys. Isn't that a bummer? I think that's a bummer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we have had some serious insect appreciation. We have made it through all kinds of technological shenanigans. And thank you, Sarah. I'm running your name, Ciaran. You were reminding me, thank you, reminding me to show you where the video is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, never done before during a program, my friends, this could get crazy real quick. I'm going to go to my little Firefox here, and I'm going to go to our, learning as I go. There we go.
You have the Nunavut.
Yeah, there we go. I want to go to our website. There we go. So it's cmnh.org, but you can just put in Cleveland Museum History. You'll find us, and then you'll see our website. And the video is hanging out under all of our school programs. I'm going to go to Learn, School Programs, and when that opens up, you can watch that other video if you want to, because it's just talking about other classes, but then you have to click right there, interactive video conferencing. I could also send the direct link to my friends Mally and Katie, who could share it out as well. And as I scroll down, I'm looking for a praying mantis. Where is that guy? Oh, there he is! And when you find that, it's the video right there. And that video is all about this class that I've been talking about. It's showing the scientists who actually worked with the praying mantises and put the little tiny wire in their brain. And you could watch the whole thing there. It's pretty wild. This video is also hanging out on YouTube, but I think it might be a little easier to find it here on our website instead of finding it on YouTube. There we go. So now I have shared all of my insecty things. It is exactly 5:30 here in Ohio. If there were any last-minute questions about insects that you want to throw at us, Jen and I have time to hang out, but if you're ready to scoot and find your own meals, now that we've talked about food, makes me hungry, right? I will say goodbye and appreciate the fact that you all stuck with me while I fooled around with all these different computer things and told you about insects.
Well, Lee, as much as I am not a bug person, I certainly appreciate all of those amazing pictures. And I liked how you also told us how many times magnified that was, because it gives us a sense of how tiny everything was.
Yeah.
And so those things like microscopes can help us investigate, because we did a session on microscopes with someone else. So that was really, really cool. I will find that link and I will put it on our resource page.
I'll just send it right to you. I'll send it to you as soon as I get done talking to you.
And then I'm going to put it on our resource page so that the kids know where to go for it. And Kieran, I'll send it to your mom. And Kieran says you should look up the book of the insects of Nunavut.
I saw that one. When I found that webpage, I also saw the description of the book. I think I will, because I love reading more books about Canadian flora and fauna.
Yeah, and Lee, I think we sent you a book about the
native plants. It's such a fun book. It's all about the grandma who was teaching her daughter all about the medicinal and edible plants. I have it. It's right over there.
Okay, and Kieran says his mom has extra copies okay, let's do that. So next time I see his mom, because you do sessions for his mom, I will get the book and I will send it. Is that okay?
Oh, really? Aww.
Yeah, send Lee the book as soon as I see your mom.
Thank you.
That sounds great. Okay, so that was fabulous, and we're going to see Lee next week, I believe, for Bodyworks, which is great, one of my favorite programs. And tomorrow, boys and girls, we have 5 sessions. Let me just tell you before you go, we have Global Soundscapes, which is really cool with Michigan Science, and we have my friend Joe, who is singing songs about Mother Earth, and then we're going to do a really cool Earth Day project with Colleen from the Winnipeg Art Gallery, and then we're going to do Ocean Wines, the plastics, and then end the day with Walkman doing some drumming. Yep, but that's not plastics in the ocean.
No.
Colleen, absolutely. We've got Colleen tomorrow. So we will see you guys tomorrow. And Lee, We just love connecting with you, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, friends. Everybody stay healthy.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lee. Okay. That was awesome.